many of them either weren't old enough to vote before or maybe didn't participate in politics in the past, but they were drawn to him for a variety of reasons. Immigration and the economy were a big part of it. A lot of these young men who feel like the middle-class American dream is difficult to achieve, difficult to reach. They felt like they could connect with Trump, and he was the man who could help them get there. But we've seen things like the podcast
that's what I
with
don't
Joe
get.
Rogan,
Why?
Hulk Hogan, UFC
Why does
President
Trump
Dana
attract
White, Elon Musk around the Trump
What?
campaign. All of
the
that has
working
been an
class
effort
like that?
to draw young men in. And even Barron Trump, who is now 18 years old, by the way, Donald Trump's youngest son, who Donald Trump calls a tech genius, has actually been involved in very hands-on and trying to book some of these podcasts to appeal to young men. So the Trump campaign has gone all in. They have thousands of volunteers who are specifically focused on those low-propensity voters, the voters who didn't participate in the past. And tonight will be a big test if that gamble pays off. David?
With Johnson at Trump headquarters in Florida, with Johnson, our thanks to you.
At least you didn't make beans tonight.
Down on Latino
No, I
voters, what
wanted
we're
to. We
seeing
didn't
from the
have
exit
any.
polls in Florida, what we can extrapolate nationwide, and how Kamala Harris is performing among Latino voters as well, in addition to the Trump campaign's outreach to try to
I better take it easy on the beans, huh?
for Joe Biden 4 years
Make sure
ago.
you rinse all the
And
rice
Elena
off your
Salinas is
plate.
standing by. What she's seeing in the numbers here tonight, too, right after the break. Don't go. ABC News live coverage of the presidential election continues right after this.
Thursday night football on Prime. It's on.
Is that karma on that plate? Or is that...
Many remedies you take for chest congestion only mask the symptoms. You're gonna love this property.
Try this.
Mucinex 12-hour treats the mucus that causes chest congestion for all day.
Will you put that sweatshirt in my room, Ellie? Don't wear stuff unless you ask.
Still not confident about which used car to buy?
Especially if it's
Why,
new.
that's the most confident person you know. My old high
Was
school
it
coach.
hanging up or on the floor? I looked all over for that.
This one's got talent, toughness, the will to win. Let me coach you on this. Just say, show me the Carfax value.
It must have been on the floor or something, huh? You don't know where you found it, or has it been in your room?
Shop at newcarfax.com.
You had it in your room? Well, no wonder I couldn't find it. That was brand new.
Okay to show off with Dupixent.
Okay, well, so you took the tags off it.
Because you have 3 reasons to show
Do you
off
think
your
that's okay?
Dupixent, the #1 prescribed biologic by dermatologists and allergists. You can stay ahead of your eczema. It helps block a key source of inflammation inside the body that can cause eczema to help heal your skin from within. Many adults saw 90% clearer skin. Some even achieved long-lasting clearer skin and fast itch relief after first dose. Serious allergic reactions can occur. It can be severe. Tell your doctor about new or worsening eye problems, such as eye pain or vision changes, including blurred vision, joint aches and pain, or a parasitic infection. Don't change or stop asthma medicines without talking to your doctor. Show off to the world. Ask your eczema specialist about Dupixent.
For the most comfortable
I
luxury.
don't know what's for dinner tomorrow night.
Handcrafted American-made mattresses
When you have
on the
work.
market today. Delivered and set up in any room
That'll
of
be
your
home.
house. Sattva. Luxury mattresses made.
Right now, votes are being counted, and tomorrow GME is right there with the morning's first news and breaking developments from our powerhouse political team.
And Ellie.
When the story matters most.
A special edition of Good Morning America with the election coverage you need. Your voice
2024 election, huh?
for the White House. Election night 2024 continues. Here again, David Muir.
Welcome back. Let's go right to the path to 270, where things stand at this hour. Donald Trump picking up 10 states on the race to 270. Kamala Harris picking up 3 states and now stands at 27 electoral votes to 105 electoral votes. Again, early in the night, but I do want to drill down on what we're learning from Florida. There's been a lot of focus on Florida, which used to be a battleground state, now far more red than it was even just a decade ago. What are we seeing as far as Latino voters, Lindsay, in Florida?
This is kind of foreboding potentially for the Harris campaign. When you take a look at the Hispanic and Latino vote in Florida, 24% they account for the electorate. Look at this. Donald Trump leading by 16 points over Kamala Harris. He's getting 57% of the vote.
Trump.
He's actually doing 11 points better with Latinos than he did in 2020. And Republicans actually haven't won the Latino vote since 2004. Now, some people might say, well, you know, there are a lot of Cuban voters in particular in Florida, but still, she's actually underperforming. And Cuban voters tend to go with Republicans, so that's not so unusual. But she's also underperforming with the Latino vote when it comes to battleground states of Georgia and also Pennsylvania.
So let's bring in Maria Elena Salinas, who knows this obviously very well, and she's with us here for our coverage tonight. Maria, what are you seeing as far as how Kamala Harris is doing among Latino voters, really across these battlegrounds?
Well, across the battleground states, and just let's remember that there are hundreds of thousands of Latino voters in all of the battleground states. And, you know, President Joe Biden did very well with Latino voters in 2020, 65% of the vote versus 32% for then President Trump. In Vice President Harris' support among Hispanics is a bit lower. The latest ABC poll had Vice President Harris at 4% versus 39% for former President Trump. But it's not all bad news for Vice President Harris, because when she entered the race just over 100 days ago, the numbers were much lower. And she's been able to increase her numbers as Latino voters got to know her, especially women and young Latinas. She's been doing a lot of outreach with Latino voters across the country, hoping her own immigrant story will resonate with them. I think the challenge for her, David, has been that, like most voters, the top issues for Latinos are the economy, inflation, crime, and immigration. And we know that former President Trump does better on those issues. Now, there is anecdotal indications and some polling on Spanish language media that shows that the so-called joke at Madison Square Garden, calling Puerto Rico floating island of garbage, has moved some Puerto Rican voters her way in Pennsylvania, you know, home to over 400,000 Puerto Rican voters, as well as North Carolina and Georgia with hundreds of thousands. And here in Florida, where Puerto Ricans are the second largest Latino voting bloc, I know previous said that they were leaning towards Trump, but, you know, we have to wait till we see those results. There's also indication that the insult of
Trump
Puerto
went to
Rico
see.
could have influence on other Latino voters who have expressed outrage at the incident in solidarity with Puerto Ricans. They say an insult to one of ours is an insult to all.
Maria Elena Salinas, I really appreciate that. Governor Christie, I wanted to bring this over to you because Florida really has changed over the course of several years here. And obviously a goal of the Trump campaign was to try to peel back some of this Latino support that Biden was successful with 4 years ago.
Well, let's look at a constant now over the last 14 years. And the constant over the last 14 years of Florida is Rick Scott. Right, so Rick Scott gets elected in 2010 by 1.5 points. He gets reelected by a point. Then he went to the Senate. He raised by 13/100ths of a point. And tonight he's up by 12.
Well, Ellie, are you
What
staying
happened
home from
between
school
2018
tomorrow?
and
If
2022 COVID? Florida
you don't like the
has
winner?
been invaded by conservative
But
voters
you said you could.
from blue states
Of
during
election?
COVID
Why
who
no?
felt that the blue state
Yes, election.
too
Trump is
tight,
winning by a lot.
and they left. And so
Yeah, but
to
it's
say that
early.
the electorate in Florida hasn't changed, it's changed drastically from 2018 to now. And for certainly Rick Scott's numbers show it. Rick Scott has never been a big winner in Florida. He's been a barely winner.
I'm voting for Trump, too.
13/100ths of a point. Now all of a sudden Rick Scott's winning by 12 tonight. What you're seeing is that record has changed because of COVID significantly in Florida. And that's why tonight you see the abortion referendum is losing. The marijuana legalization referendum is losing. All of that shows that it's trending much better in Florida, and I believe it's the influx of people from 2020 to 2024, driven mostly by COVID.
And who are now calling Florida home.
Yep.
Let's go to Rick Klein. Rick, let's check out Georgia. Where are we at this hour?
We get a significant amount of vote in, almost 2/3 of the vote, and I'm starting to focus also on the vote margin between the candidates. Right now, Donald Trump by about 190,000 votes. There's still a lot of vote to go, especially in the Atlanta metro area, but we do have numbers out of Fulton County and DeKalb County. These are really the Democratic bases. Kamala Harris doing about what she needs to do in some of these places. But if you move a little bit further out, you start to get a different portrait. Fayette County, you're keeping an eye on right now, a slight Trump edge, and big Trump numbers where he needs to be overperforming, hitting his benchmark almost exactly in Cherokee County, north of the city. The story so far really is the election day vote being heavily Republican. That's a problem for Kamala Harris because of the imbalance that we talked about in the early vote. We didn't have as much of a Democratic imbalance this time, so Democrats need to have a bigger election day. We're just not seeing signs of that yet. There's still a lot out, again, about a third of the vote overall, but you start to see stubborn margins come in, especially when good chunks of the vote are coming in already from the largest counties in the state.
And where's the benchmark for Fulton County? Where does she need to be performing? Well, she's just below.
She's about a point below that. And just to put in perspective, Fulton County is 178,000 advantage for Kamala Harris, and she's down by 200,000. To think about how far she'd be behind without the reporting we see from these two counties right next to each other. That's an enormous amount of vote, and it's vote that's already banked. Now we'll see what comes in. There's going to be a lot of election day vote in counties like that and throughout the Atlanta metro area.
Compromise people
Great
in
spots
that.
on our map are just places we don't have enough data to tell
Probably
you,
on
is it
pretty
gonna
much every
tip to one
channel, is it,
direction
or no?
the other? So there's still some blank spots to be filled in. But again, as this number grows and this number stays stubbornly high, that's a problem for the Harris campaign.
And how much of this is early vote versus day of? Is all of the early vote in now?
We're getting almost all, about 80% of the expected early vote in so far, and it is a large number. And here's where Trump is leading. That, again, a little bit of a change from previous cycles, maybe a reversion to people's historic norms of how they voted, but Trump winning in that early vote, that is a large portion of the vote in Georgia overall.
All right, Rick Klein showing us the dynamic of the early vote this time around. Donald Trump embracing the early vote with his supporters. They did turn out in force, and we have to wait and see how in some of these other battleground states how that's going to play out. Donald Trump leading in Georgia at this hour. When we're closing into the 9 o'clock hour here, polls close in about 15 states, including the key battleground of Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin as well. Your local news is standing by, and our live election night coverage continues in just a moment right here.
Crazy, Luggy.
Did you want another taco?
Yeah, a little. I can take your plate. A little bit more. I was waiting for you to have more, Ellie.
I think I'm done eating.
Did you see we got a couple of TV trays?
Money's tight, so we must accept.
We're living the high life up in here.